Welcome to the Off Central Podcast. I'm Pastor Larry Kirk. I'm joined today with one of the great theologians in Baltimore, Pastor Jonathan Prothero, and a special guest. We have a special guest with us today, Rob Kowalski of City Fam. We're super excited to have you, Rob.
I'm grateful to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Many people that are listening to this may not know who Rob is. I'm going to let him kind of chime in and just kind of share a little bit about Rob and what you're doing right now. One of the things that I love about Rob and what his heart is to reach people far from Jesus, and it's just a powerful thing what you guys do with City Fam and through that organization. But I don't want to steal any of your thunder, but just share a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. I was grew up in Baltimore. I was born and raised here. My mom was 14 when she got pregnant with me, and my dad was never in the same state growing up, so I kind of taught myself how to be a man. We were poor. We lived in the city. And I just kind of learned it from watching television and movies. So to me, what I thought a man was somebody that was good with girls. And it was probably my insecurity. So from a young age, when I hit puberty, I'd found a videotape that my mom had rented with some friends. And it was the Chippendales. And I didn't
really.
Yeah. So I was like
Chippendales.
I'm like 15 years old. I don't know if they were the Chippendales. They were strippers.
Yeah.
Male strippers.
Yeah.
And
Chippendales are not the Chipmunks.
Right.
Remember Chippendale? The Chipmunk. That's a dad joke. Okay, but I digress. But so seriously, you watched that and then
I popped it in. I didn't know what it was, and I saw guys dancing and girls sticking money in their pants, and and instantly I remember thinking, that's what I want to be when I grow up. Like, what better job can there be than that? And
wow.
So. Like I said, I was about 15, started working out, lost my virginity not long after that. And when I was 19, that was my way out of the city, is I started working for entertainment agencies. I started working for one, doing private parties, and then eventually I was working for them all. And I was dancing with a review that traveled around to like a tri-state area, and was making a lot of money, was very popular, was very sexually active. And when I was 25, I got approached by a nightclub owner, and he said, you know a lot of people, why don't you promote a night at the club? And I didn't really know what it entailed, but basically we would go in a night that he was not busy or closed, and we would throw a party, and then we would get to keep the money that we charged at the door.
And this is before social media exploded, right? So
it was before social media.
So this is like, the connections had to be deep. I mean, as far as getting the word out.
Exactly. It was word of mouth, and we were pretty good at it. So we threw this party. It was called the Fat Black Pussycat in Baltimore City, and it was it was the craziest, most debaucherous party. It's still the most notorious party in Baltimore history that I know. People talk about it still. It was very illegal. Like, there was illegal components of it. But it got a lot of people's attention, and next thing I know, I was approached by a nightclub owner in DC, and he's like, come promote a night there. And so I kind of took over the nightlife. I was still stripping a little bit, but my life was just really crazy. It was a party. It was like lots of casual sex and drugs, and I was making a lot of money, and I thought, that I kind of thought I had everything that I wanted. My life was spiraling. I got arrested a few times, always problems in my relationships with women. Drug use was, increasing, and I guess I thought I was going to get a handle on it at some point. I didn't want to quit using drugs. I knew I needed to do less because I was using frequently, and pretty much at the height of my popularity, and I was like making the most amount of money promoting weekly events in Baltimore and DC. I went to Cancun, Mexico on spring break with a bunch of friends, and the first night I was there, I went out and I went to sleep by the pool because there was a bunch of people in my room partying. And when I woke up the next morning, I got baptized in the Holy Spirit.
What?
Yeah, that's how it happened.
So what do you talk us through that for a second?
Yeah.
So obviously you're at one end of extreme of lifestyle, and it's all pretty nuts,
crazy,
drugs and everything. So what do you mean you woke up and got baptized? Like, what happened?
Yeah, so literally the night before we were at a club, girls are on the bar, pulling out body parts, kissing each other, like the whole crowd's cheering for us. 2 naked girls in the bathtub back in my hotel room, like guys jacked up on steroids walking around. This was like my life. It was a normal scene from my life. And I would go out to sleep at the pool. I wake up the next morning, and the very first thing that God told me was, And I didn't know it was him at first because I'd never heard God's voice or felt his presence. And I went to Christian schools.
I was going to ask you that, like somewhere that intersected with your life, like Christianity or church or something. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a church in my neighborhood when I was growing up in Baltimore, and I would go to it just to hang out with the other kids. And I went to summer camp a couple of times and I raised my hand. Okay. I actually went to Christian school for like 3 years. I think I got expelled from Calvary Baptist. I got expelled from Calvary Chapel.
Shocker.
It wasn't my uncle. When it really, he was kind of like a father figure to me.
Okay. So the uncle.
So he put me in school, but my mom wasn't, backing it up at home, and so it never really stuck. And I saw people even speak in tongues when I was in the 5th grade, and it never happened to me. So by the time I hit adulthood, I just kind of wondered if it was real. Like I didn't know. I didn't really think about it a lot. But I do remember looking at people praying, wondering if anybody was listening. But so I wasn't sure. So this day I woke up and I looked at my girlfriend laying in bed, and I guess I had this thought, 1,000 times before this. I never recognized that I was asking myself this question until this day, but I looked at my girlfriend sleeping in bed and I asked myself, are you in love? And I recognized that now I recognize that I've been doing it with every girl I dated before that. And normally I would go, well, one day you'll grow to love her, blah, blah, blah. And I would kind of let myself off the hook, give myself some BS answer, and the question would drift away. And this day, I heard the question, are you in love? And I heard, no. And I thought, if I'm being honest, I thought, where the F did that come from? That's what I thought. I was like, where in the heck? Because I had never answered myself like that. And then a really simple question said, who are you attracted to that you haven't had sex with yet? And it was like one name. If you would have asked me before this day, I did not believe in love. I didn't think that it existed. I thought you just stayed with the person that hit the most of the points on your mental checklist. And I didn't ever even want to get married. But this day, it was one girl's name popped in my head, and it was no other answer. It was like a key in a lock is the only way I can explain it. And it was a girl that had moved to California a year earlier. And she had lived in Baltimore, and I was friends with her. But I thought she was pretty, but never anything more than that. So of course, I didn't recognize it was God at this point. So I go down to the payphone in Cancun because I'm so sure now that I'm going to marry this girl that I'm going to call her and tell her to fly back to Baltimore. And as I'm coming back, so I didn't get through, but as I'm coming back from the payphone, that's when I really God started saying, trust me, trust me, trust me, over and over. I prophesied. God told me some things about future events.
Really?
All within like about a few day period.
This is like
this road to Damascus.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, it's just like.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Because you've never experienced that before, right?
Nothing.
Yeah.
No, nothing like it. I mean, I could still tell you some things that they're not pleasant, but I can tell you a couple things that are about to happen that God told me about 22 years ago. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but they're not good.
Wow. Let's finish this first. Yeah.
So that's how it happened. I got baptized in the Spirit. I didn't even know what it was called.
Wow.
I just knew God was communicating with me.
Wow.
I was 100% sure that Jesus was who he said he was. The Holy Spirit came over me. I didn't speak in tongues, but I did prophesy. And there was all kinds of signs that he had left me. Like, so my stage name when I was a stripper for 8 years was Christian. And
really?
Yeah. And somebody, I didn't pick that for myself. Somebody gave that to me. And even after the name was given to me, I was like, wondered why I chose that. Like, why didn't I just use my middle name, Brandon? But because in hindsight, it was like God left all these breadcrumbs for me to find, but I didn't see them until he was ready for me to see them. So I did the most radical 180 a person can do from that moment. I quit stripping. I broke up with my girlfriend. I cut off all my friends. I mean, so like, this is what I explain to people. Some people, usually you have to make some changes when you come to God.
Yeah.
I had to change everything. I had to change my career, like all my friends. Everything was wrong about my life, according to God's ways.
Like everything was drying up. Like at that point, money, all that stuff, you had to make a choice.
Yep.
A massive one, an incredible faith step, for your life. But
no, exactly. So I that was in March of 2000. So for like a year and a half, God just kind of set me on the shelf. He didn't give me a job, didn't let me work. I read the Bible a few times, was going to a good church out in Columbia called Grace Fellowship, Grace Community, actually. Okay. And I learned was learning a lot about God because I didn't know really much about him. And, but I got very lonely quickly. So this is where God's so smart. because he tells me about this girl, and she lives 3,000 miles away, and she's in a relationship with somebody else. And what I explain to people is when I cut off all my friends, I surely would have dated out of loneliness, because I got lonely within a matter of about 2 weeks. I got lonely quick, because I went from having this active social life. I'm in clubs 4 nights a week.
Yeah.
The
community you had built, just really, well, at that point, they were a lifetime of friends, right?
Yeah.
Like you just, had it all.
Yeah.
Together.
So my social calendar dried up, and really I didn't have it much besides going to church on Sunday. I didn't even have a job, and I didn't have a girlfriend, and I didn't have hardly any friends. So I become really desperate for community at this point. So I was like, there's got to be some other people out there like me. So what happened was I committed to God. I believed that he told me about the girl. I said, okay, I'm going to wait, God, because I had never been in love. And I was like sure that he told me about this girl. So I said, okay, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait for her, but you better hurry up. I said, because I can't wait long with sex. And I thought it was going to be fast. I thought God would probably bring her in like a month or so, maybe 2. And it turned into 6 years of me waiting for him, with 6 years of abstinence, let's say. And this whole time, I like church. I like the things that I was learning, but I couldn't find a community to plug in with, because there really wasn't a whole lot going on outside of Sundays that I could find at the church I was going to. So, I went to a lot of movies over the course of about 6 years, trying to just stay out of trouble, stay out of sin, because I thought surely if I don't sin long enough, he's going to give me this girl. But the whole time I'm also looking for a community of people that I can relate to. So I went to like Frontline, McLean Bible Church. They had this young adults thing. I went there. I was like, didn't appeal to me. I went to Christian coffee houses, a few of them. They were super, they were lame.
Hey, no ex-strippers there. So it just doesn't relate.
Yeah, I mean, what I viewed as fun and what was being offered was just so different. So different. And I'm like, I just thought, okay, I'm going to hunker down and just stay out of trouble. And I kind of isolated a lot, while I waited, and eventually I backslid because I couldn't be alone anymore. This was 2006. I just decided to give myself some freedom, started going to the bars again a little bit on the weekends. I actually started leading a Bible study in a bar in 2006. Did I ever tell you that? No. So it was called Fight Club, and wait a
minute. What do you mean? What was there like literally? Let's do this after we study the Bible a little bit.
So in 2006, I'd managed the gym for 5 years, and in 2006, I really felt like God was giving me the green light to go back into promoting. And I thought, okay, I was shocked by it, but I prayed a lot. I could have complete peace about it, and I thought, okay, well, maybe he's going to have me make a difference from the inside. So I got back into promoting. Nobody even knew who I was anymore because I've been gone for 6 years. But within 3 months, I just took over the nightlife. And here I hadn't had sex in 6 years. I was going to Epic. I just started going to Epic. Just met Chris Lockamy. And so Saturday night, I had the hottest club in Baltimore. 800 people come in, line out the door.
Wow.
But on Thursdays, we were reading Purpose Driven Life in the club.
Yeah.
And I told my doorman, I said, look, if anybody from the Bible study comes on Saturday, let them in for free and don't charge them a cover, treat them like VIP. And we would go out and feed the homeless after. We'd go down to Homeless Park on Thursdays, and it blew up. Like the Bible study just turned to like 50 or 60 people, and I had strippers and drug dealers come in, and I was like, this is awesome. These are my people.
Wow.
And it was great for a minute because it was so edgy. And I didn't have any accountability. I didn't have like anybody checking on me, and I slept with a girl, and I kept it quiet because I knew it looked bad. And then about a month later, I slept with a second girl, and I kept it quiet. And then some people found out about it in a small group, and they confronted me, and then I just stepped down, and my life spiraled out from that point.
Wow.
So,
man, what a journey. You talk about a colorful journey.
Not the sort of normal 9 to 5 casual sort of faith journey. I mean, there's so many questions I'm really interested in. Can I just backtrack a little bit? When you start talking about prophesying over yourself, I'd be interested in what you said and how much of that has come to fruition, how much of that are you still chasing after, but also in conjunction with that, what made you jump to God and faith? Like, what was it, faith, and what was it in your mind that said, yes, this is God speaking, this is me prophesying? Like, was it like is it something you look back on now and go, that's what was happening? Was it total confusion at the time, or was it like super clear, no, this is God speaking, this is where my life's going?
I was sure it was God speaking, but there was in the midst of God telling me things that were true, I was also hearing other things that weren't true. So there was a spirit of confusion. I often think about Paul when he rode to Damascus, he got struck with blindness. Like I was saying some crazy stuff for a few days, but I knew that there were true things that were being told to me at the same time. So like the things that God told me, I'll tell you, there's a few things. Well, the two things that are about to happen is the currency is going to collapse in America.
Yeah.
There's going to be a worldwide depression. It's going to be in America. It's going to be worldwide. So the cash will be trash. If anybody's listening, start a food pantry and buy some precious metals or something. I'm not an economist. All I know is that this inflation thing is not going, it's going to continue. It's going to get a lot worse. Yeah. So he told me that 22 years ago. And then he also told me that the United States and China are going to go to war with each other. 100%. I'll bet my life on it, that it happens.
And you had some deep end time type of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, I scared the crap out of it. That was why I turned so hard. Because I was like, and so I saw a lot of signs about the second coming. I mean, I won't get into them all, but he sent me a lot of signs. So it really scared me. A lot of my change was based out of fear. Like, oh my God, the world's coming to an end. I thought all this was going to happen 22 years ago.
Wow.
So, the one thing that he told me about my life was the girl. So here I wait for her for 6 years, don't date. I wouldn't even entertain the idea that it's somebody else. It could have been someone else, and she doesn't come back, and she ends up getting married. And then, but then now, so where she's at now is she's divorced, still living in California, got somewhat of a relationship with God from what I can tell, but her and I don't talk, and she's the last person in the world that I would ever want to marry. Like seriously, because of all the trauma, like the scar tissue of me waiting and reaching out so many times and not. So I don't know what that meant. I try to make sense of it in my head, except that, well, one, if God didn't tell me about someone specifically, I wouldn't have waited. I would have tried to wait. I would have dated, and then I would have had sex because that was all I really knew. And I wouldn't have known about community. Like the reason that City Fam is such a passion for me is because I was so lonely when I came to God that it really birthed that in me.
See, that's what people don't understand about City Fam. Like if they just look at it just from a Christian perspective, and I'm sure you've had some pushback from pastors and stuff before. I don't know, but maybe you have.
I have.
That if they don't know your story and the reason why City Fam was birthed and brought to fruition, and you're the founder. It's incredible. I think what you guys are doing. If they don't hear your story, then I think that doesn't make sense to them. Like, I'm not sure about this bar and this thing, this and all that connected together. When they don't understand that you're really at heart an evangelist. Yeah. And you're reaching people far from Jesus.
That's what it's all about.
And they're in their comfortable churches and their walls and not branching out and really making a difference in people's lives in that regard.
Love that.
So I think that there's always been pushback with City Fam, but if this is the story they need to hear, though. This is what people need to hear about, because there's a lot of people, you post on Instagram a lot, all that stuff. And if we just know, hey, Pastor talked about Rob Kowalski the other day, and man, it's a little edgy what he posted on. Well, if you know his story, then you'll understand what, why he's branding the way he's branding himself and all those things and doing what God has called him to do. And it's not your track. It's not my track. It's Rob's. And so
where City Fam works best, I found, is when you really, the people that are really churchy, that you're going to rub them the wrong way.
Totally.
And then but then the
Yeah.
people in the world, they get rubbed the wrong way because we talk about God too much. So it's like, really, we're kind of in the middle. And if we're irritating both sides, it's working. So I think about Jesus, though. Like that. He was at Matthew's house. The religious people did not understand what he was doing at the time. I think there's a lot of people that don't understand what we're doing. I view City Fam as, I view the church as the hospital for the broken. I view City Fam as the ambulances. We go out to meet the people where they're at, and we bring them back through the relationships.
A lot of trauma. There's some trauma in their life.
There's people that are never going to walk into a church. I don't care how many times you invite them, but if you go meet them, build a relationship with them, love on them a little bit, you can get them back. I've seen it happen hundreds of times. And it's also given me a social life, which has prevented me from backsliding now, because I get to go out and do some things that I enjoy, and I have safety in numbers. I have accountability through other City Fam members. But yeah, I try to keep it edgy on purpose because, you know, like Paul says, I became all things to all men so I might win some. So you have to be relatable to people. And if I was to come out and start talking, you know, all churchy, people would be like, get the heck out of here, this guy. Like people wouldn't even believe it.
Oh, they see right through it.
Right.
Anyway.
They know me. They're like, get out of here.
Yeah.
So I try to keep it real, or, you know,
authentic
for me. Right.
Yeah.
So just to backtrack again a little bit. So 6 years of abstinence, then you were running sort of a nightclub, small group Bible study that was blowing up. But then that did blow up, you know, you kind of felt like you backslid and that didn't work. So you stepped aside, and then what, is that the inception of City Fam? Maybe or like how did City Fam birth? What was the idea? What was the model? What happened there?
Thanks for asking. So when I started to backslide, I just met Pastor Chris. I asked him to take over the small group. I'm like, I can't lead it because I was afraid I was going to make another mistake. So he took over, and like I won't say what he said, but he's like, he basically castrated it, right? Because he's a pastor now, and it wasn't nearly as edgy. Yeah. So the numbers just eventually dwindled down, and it kind of went away. And it was, for me, it was the perfect storm, because I've been abstinent for 6 years. Now I'm the most popular person in Baltimore again, making a lot of money, and I'd already broken my 6-year streak, and I had very little accountability. Yeah. And I just spiraled, like tons of sin. And over the next 4 or 5 years, and my dad got stage 4 cancer in 2010, I think it was. So through a series of events related to that, God really brought me to my knees again. I didn't even know how I'd ever get back to God. Like I still would go to Epic sometimes, and I'd see people worshiping, and I would think, like, I don't even remember feeling like that. I was so numb, but God, He brought me back, and when I rededicated, you know, I basically went through the same thing that I went through the first 6 years for about a year, where I was staying in every night watching Redbox movies. I think I might have told the story at Central when you guys had me here, where I literally rented every movie in Redbox except for Dolphin Tale, and I went there, and it was the last. And I'm like, I was so mad, because I'm like, I'm a cool guy. I used to run the nightlife, and I'm like, I'm watching Dolphin Tale on a Saturday night by myself. I'm like, that's how bad the options were for social, you know, something fun. And I was like, man, I was complaining to somebody, and I said, I don't know where this abundant life crap is, but my life's not abundant. My life sucks. Yeah. And they were like, why don't you start, you know, putting on social events that don't cause you to make any mistakes? And they said, you were a promoter. And I said, it was like a light bulb. So I started organizing. First I started organizing these events in bars called Clean. And I would take 3 Christian bands, and I would take 3 bar bands, and I'd put them on the roster. And I would tell the Christian bands, I'd be like, don't get too churchy, because there's going to be some people that ain't Christians here. I don't want to offend them. I'd tell the bar bands, don't cuss too much, because I got church people coming. So it would create this interesting dynamic. So we started doing those. And then Billy Lofton and I had this really debaucherous pool party when I was backsliding in Ocean City called Rehab. And I had rededicated my life to God at this point. I'm on leadership at Epic, but I still have control over it. And every Memorial Day weekend, it would make like $15,000 without hardly any work, because I just built it up to that point. And I was thinking, I don't really want to promote it anymore, but if I don't do it, somebody else is just going to do it and make all the money. So I was like, I really didn't know what to do. I was praying about it for like weeks, and it came to the point where I had to make a decision. It was a time that I had to decide. The club owner was calling me, and I had this crazy little whisper. I think it was God, and He said, well, what if you took all the money and you did an international relief trip, and you paid for people to go with you from the party? I was like, I don't know, that seems a little edgy. I was like, even for me, I thought that's really still too edgy. So I called Chris, and I was like, is this okay? And he's like, yeah, do it. So I didn't, but I still didn't promote it that hard. It's kind of let it do its thing, because I still didn't feel right about promoting it. I just was like, I'm just going to take the money. Yeah. So I literally, it was kind of funny looking back on it. I had this like pretty hot girl on the cover of the flyer in front of a jungle, and it said OC to Grenada. And it said, and basically advertised, all the money from this is going to be used to fund an international relief trip, and, you know, basically you can come with us. So we took like 13 people that year. And we took some people that definitely wouldn't have came, I don't think, otherwise. But I kind of like was killing 2 birds with one stone. And then through that's kind of really how City Fam was born, where it was like bridging people from social to service, and then trying to get them into community, which is church or small group.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible, man.
Which part?
So no, it's just how it started.
Yeah.
Like, you know, some people would say, I'm not sure about, but that's like, you know, you've seen so much fruit from that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
In connecting people through service and through that process.
Yeah.
Because because the church is not going to reach everyone.
Right.
It's just not going to, even though we can be as missional as we want and try to, we're never going to be able to do probably what City Fam can do because I feel like that's even more outer, like it's way out here.
Yeah.
And there's no connection to church unless somebody invites them, of course. But even then, like you said, some people won't even step through the doors of a church.
Right.
And you guys are making that probably possible for people to connect in some way in the future.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I've seen hundreds of people come to the Lord through it.
Yeah.
It's so organic too, because, a lot of times they're at a social event and then they just feel something, because typically City Fam people are a little nicer than the average, because there's a lot of Christians in City Fam. So they automatically, we have that, what can I do for you attitude. So they feel that. And then it's not about they don't know it's about anything. And then we're like, hey, we're going to go do Special Olympics next Saturday. You want to come? And people are always like, oh my gosh, I've always wanted to do something like that. I just didn't know how to start. By the time they start serving, it's just, they feel something different than they probably felt about themselves maybe ever. And that's it. And then they're hooked. And then next thing you know, we're like, oh yeah, we go to Central on Sundays, and they just come along.
Right.
That's wild.
I think this probably worth making, if I may, a theological point here as well about church, because what I would argue what Rob's doing is church. Although you might say you're a parachurch organization, I understand that organizationally, but so often we think of church as the 2-hour service, or church as what happens within these four walls. But then you ask somebody, what is the church? And they say, well, we are the church. Okay. So it's not got to do with the service or the building. Rob's the church, I'm the church, you're the church. And so Rob's doing his church work in his arena. So a nation of priests, he's a priest to the people in the way that you've been equipped, in the way that you now with what you know, with your testimony. And what are you doing? You're discipling people. I mean, that's bottom line what it is. It might be a different way to the sort of mainline institution church form model of doing it here in Baltimore, but you're discipling people, you're bringing people closer to Jesus. And we have to, I think, church pastors, church people have to understand that some people are so far away, you do have to go to the edges of what seems edgy in order to reach them, to get them just to turn around a little bit. You go, oh, you can't, but that's what Jesus did. He was drinking wine with people. He was at the parties, at the weddings. He was at the celebrations. He was with the prostitutes. He was in those places that are really difficult for us. And so, I think you can easily make the argument that you are creating church because you're drawing people to Jesus. There's a vision, there's a goal, there's discipleship happening, and how many people, hundreds, have been baptized through the work that you've done.
I appreciate it, Jonathan. Thank you.
So I think it's worth making that point live on YouTube for people to see.
Yeah, no question. I mean, it's all, I think, it's like, it's probably like our economy and everything else. Like, we're stuck in a system. And the system says the church is a building. The church is where you go to worship. It's where you go to get your stuff right. It's where you go to, to act right for an hour. And and it's the system. And I think what Rob has done is broken the system, which is a good thing. Yeah, you literally have thrown a monkey wrench. That's why pastors push back on it. Because they don't understand. They don't like it. But you're in good company, like you said. Jesus had a lot of pushback. When he did some stuff like that.
I think it's just all God's idea. None of it was my idea. I think about the book, the waiting message. Like, that was not my idea. God completely duped me into it. I would have tried. But I wouldn't have been able to do it. And so everything that's happened in my life it's been all by His design. Super grateful that He's using me. None of it made sense at the time. All the years of loneliness. I was literally just on the shelf for like 6 years working at a gym after having this huge come to Jesus moment. And I was like, well, what was that? Every time I tried to share my faith back then, it would just come off so awkward because I've invited people to church. Right. That was the thing for me, whereas I had this evangelistic call or whatever on my life, but I couldn't get anybody to come to church with me. And I was the leader of the pack. And that's what was frustrating for me. So when I rededicated and I was staying in every night by myself, still trying to get people to come to church unsuccessfully, that's really where I was like, you know what? We got to go to them and build the relationship.
For sure. Good.
So
And some people will call you the radical, and I actually think that's a compliment. You know, radical actually does mean, it comes from where we get the word radishes. It means root.
Yeah.
And so the radical is actually not the person who's doing something crazy. They're actually bringing it back to the root of what it was in the beginning.
Yeah.
Jesus going out to the people.
Yeah.
And so I love what you're doing. So City Fam has obviously grown. What is it now? Like, it's
all
a
over the
community.
place. Yeah.
But how do you, what is it?
I mean, I think you're right in saying it's a parachurch organization, although we don't tell anybody that. I'm quick to say it's not faith-based because I really want to let people, you know, I don't want the people not of faith to stop coming. But I mean, what I look at it is this is what God's doing. It's okay. So here he's got me, this ex-stripper, with this waiting message, and it's proven to people it can be done because I'm the last person that would be able to do it, and I'm doing it for a long time. Yeah. So I see a lot of people in City Fam, and there are people that were good church-going singles, but they were having sex before City Fam. Behind closed doors, they were doing whatever dirt. They come into City Fam, they get into a community of people. They a lot of times they'll get sexually pure, and then they start going out and doing the thing that Jesus said, which was go, and inviting people to join to a place that people will actually come to, social event, service event, and then that's how the thing grows. So I really think I think we're going to lead a great revival, maybe the biggest revival in the history of the world. I'm serious. I know it sounds crazy to say that, but I think it's that different. I don't see anything else like it. So, you know, God willing, we'll do that before he comes back. Because I do think he's coming back soon. I mean, I think I saw a lot of signs. I thought it was, like I said, 22 years ago. Maybe it's 22 years from now. I don't know when it's going to happen, but I think I'm going to be alive to see the rapture.
Yeah, that's. Well, we can deep dive into that later on. But
that's a whole nother podcast.
That's a whole nother podcast. Yeah, but share a little bit about your book, Why Waiting Works, because you know I thought it went over when you shared here with Pastor Jay on stage. I thought it went over just really well. People just connected with it, specifically people that may struggle in those areas, but just share a little bit about your book.
Yeah, thanks. First off, I love you guys, man. The fact that you would let me come on the stage and share, and also just for anybody out there listening that doesn't know, you know that you gave us a sizable donation when we were starting City Fam, and it really helped us a lot. And it was, and I didn't even approach you. Yeah. I don't know if you remember.
I do. Yeah.
I was here for a baptism, and you're like, "How you doing?" I said, "Pretty good. Need anything?" "No, I don't think so." "You want $5,000? I said, okay.
He's never asked me that question.
But it was huge. So the fact that you saw, you know, what we were doing from such an early time really means a lot. And I love this place. It's my second home for sure. So the book, I mean, was written I didn't understand waiting when I started. It was, to me, you know, it was a dumb idea. I remember questioning God, like, why is this wrong? It's two people making each other feel good. And it was only after time of waiting that I started to understand, like, why I kept making the same mistakes in my relationships, the different problems. Because I had, like I said, I'd never been in love, and I thought, well, maybe human beings aren't supposed to be monogamous, or maybe I'm just not the kind of person that can fall in love. I wasn't sure. I had a lot of different theories about why I couldn't have eyes for only one. And I never considered that it was because I wasn't waiting, you know, I wasn't being obedient in this area of my life. And I started to figure it out after some time of obedience. And then I think when it really clicked is when I backslid, and then I came back again. Something from like going from one end to there and then back again. I felt like I just really understood it maybe better than anybody else, like the practicality of it. So I made a video called 10 Reasons Not to Have Sex Before Marriage, posted on YouTube. This is like 5 years ago. And it went viral.
It went viral, didn't it? Yeah.
And then I was like, I'm going to write a book.
How many views does that thing have?
Like 1.8 million. You know?
He says,
well, like, I mean, it stopped. Million. It's like, I was hoping at least.
I know,
like 2,
but still, you know? Man. Yeah, of course.
So it was cool because, you know, I had a lot of people I mentioned City Fam in the video. So I had people reaching out that were waiting, and they're like, hey, you know, what is a City Fam thing? It looks like you guys are actually having fun while you're waiting. Yeah. And that's what really kind of made us try to get our act together so we could go into other places. Yeah. But the book was really based off me not understanding it, and then really understanding it and wanting to explain it practically to people. Because a lot of times when you're in the church, they'll tell you not to do it, but they don't tell you really why. Like, okay, what if I don't? You know, how's this going to really affect my life besides its sin? That's what I wanted to try to explain to people.
Yeah. Well, share a little bit about that. Like share just a few things about, why is it, it's people are listening. Why is it good for someone to wait?
Yeah. Well, I think the number one thing we have to start with is the numbers, because I think people have different theories, and they'll say, well, you got to take a car for a test drive and all that. But if try before you buy, which is what you're saying, if that works so well, then why is everybody that doing it getting divorced? Because the divorce rate's 50%.
Okay.
So they're right there. Yeah. It tells you it doesn't work.
Yeah.
97% of people don't wait. Divorce rate's 50%. Okay. Divorce rates for virgins I read is 6%. So there's something there that tells you, so when you're waiting, you ask yourself the hard questions on the front end. So before I would have sex with a girl, and either I would immediately lose interest or I would continue sleeping with them, and then we would drift into a relationship, which happens sometimes. But I would always be looking over my shoulder at the other ones going, I wonder if I could be happier with them. So I wasn't asking myself the hard questions on the front end. I was asking them after I was already in something. An entanglement is what they call it now. So now when I meet a girl, I could, within a relatively short amount of time, I can ask myself that question: could you be happier with someone else? If I can't say no, then I'm not going to have sex with them. I'm not even going to continue dating them, because if I'm not sure that I can be happier with someone, sure. Then what's the point in continuing the relationship? So that's why it works. I think I go back to the heart is deceitful, right? David says the heart's deceitful. So you could. And this is the way I framed it in 10 Reasons. I said, if you said no sex before love, right? Most people can get their minds around that. They have a harder time getting their minds around no sex before marriage. So you say, okay, what about no sex before love? Most people say, okay, that's reasonable. Okay, great. How do you know if you're in love? Because if I was dating a woman and I said, hey, Sally, I love you. Let's have sex. And she says, sure, Rob, I love you too. Let's just run to the justice of the peace real quick. I'd be like, oh, let me think about this a little bit longer, right? That's the point.
Yeah.
Because now I'm going to find out if my heart's lying. Because if it is lying to me, guess what? If I would have had sex with her, and then what? Could have gotten into an entanglement, could have made a baby, a lot of bad things could have happened. Yeah. But I'll find out if my heart's lying, because once you introduce marriage in the conversation, you know that a divorce is going to be painful. So you're going to ask yourself the really hard questions. Yeah. And that's what marriage was for. That's why I think God did it, because he didn't want us to end up with the wrong people. He didn't want us to drift into relationships and waste our whole lives. In addition to the fact that, like, from a man's perspective, I think women intuitively know more so to wait than a man, because men, I really did not understand it. But men are driven by accomplishment. And there's a great verse in the New Testament that said, let no one be sexually immoral or godless like Esau, who traded his birthright for a bowl of stew. So if you know the story of Jacob and Esau, right, he traded his birthright, something that was permanent, that would have lasted his whole lifetime, for something really temporary, a bowl of stew. And then he was hungry again a few hours later. Yep. So when we do that, we're trading casual sex for our birthright, which is what? Our purpose and our person, I believe. If you look at my life, the last 10 years, what I've accomplished, because it has not been easy not having sex, like a companion. It's been hard. But I've written books, started a nonprofit, like come up with, church coaching system for growing the church. So I've done a lot of things, and I'm like, I think if it wasn't for God, I would have totally traded all that for sex. I would have had a lot of sex in my life, but at the end of my life, I think I would have had a lot of regret too. I don't think I would have accomplished much. Nothing that added value to the world. Yeah. So
adding value to the world, that's a good way to describe it. Can I ask some specific questions that I'm sure, I don't know how much time we have, so I wanted to get into this because we're kind of getting to sort of the back end of stuff. I wanted to ask you about two things. At the moment, lots of people graduating, talking about young people. I work with young people, particularly going to college, away from homes, familiarity, the bubble, protection, church communities, and they're stepping into a very different whatever. I mean, I know colleges are different, but you just don't know. It's sort of a throw of the dice, I feel like. What kind of advice do you give to young people right now, like practical advice? Because we can throw a scripture at them, but that doesn't always help people, because, practically, what kind of advice would you give to young people right now, sort of stepping into those sort of spheres and those environments?
Yeah. I think number one, I guess you got to know why you're doing it. That's, for me, I had real strong motivation to be obedient to God in the beginning. So I would want to get really clear about, your vision for your life, or whatever your reasons are that you want to be pure or you want to be obedient. And I really think it has to do, for me, it has a lot to do with vision, because I know that won't get there if I'm disobedient. So like, what do you really want? And get crystal clear about it. Write it into a vision statement. Read it to yourself every day and keep that in front of you, because whatever you want most, like failure, they define failure as trading what you want most for what you want right now. So you're going to have a lot of things that you want right now, especially at college. But if you know what you want most and you keep your eye on that, then you're less likely to make that trade. But when you don't know, like in the word says, without vision, people perish. They cast off restraint.
Cast
the
off
other
restraint,
right. So that when you have a clear vision, you're less likely to cast off that restraint and go do something that's going to trip you up. So I would say that first. But then also, like, I think getting married young and having kids is it's pretty good. Like, I wish I kind of did that. I didn't know. I wish I had it modeled for me growing up, because I see people that young couples and they have little children, and I think I missed out on a lot. So I'd love to see people recapture that again. I know there's a lot of people that don't want to get married in this country because I think they've seen a lot of people do it backward because of the sexual revolution. So they think marriage is the issue, right? Especially the younger generation. They're like, who gets married anymore? I had somebody comment on one of my things the other day. And I said, look, marriage, that's just semantics, because if I was to ask anybody listening to say, hey, look, how would you like to find your best friend that you're physically attracted to long-term, not just short-term, that can help you reach your purpose in life? Would you like that? Most people will go, yeah, I love that. Great. Don't have sex before marriage. It'll help you find them. So like that for me is, I think it's just kind of reframing it. But yeah, knowing your vision, and then not getting hung up on the semantics of marriage.
Yeah. No, that's really helpful. One other thing I think, because it's so ubiquitous in our culture today, we can't go through a podcast like this without talking about pornography, which is a huge issue for people who feel like they are maybe waiting as well, or I'm not going out and doing this and this, but now I'm stuck at home with a mobile device, and I have 24/7 access to this. I can only speak as a man. There's a biological life cycle of 48 hours, and biologically your body's just saying, hey, this has to go somewhere. I don't want to get too graphic, but you know what I'm saying. And it's so accessible, it's so easy. What advice do you give to young guys, I guess, but also statistics show that it's almost 50-50 when it comes to this issue. We tend to focus on it being a guy issue, but it absolutely is not. This is a human heart issue, of course. What advice do you give to people who they're trying their best, but
Well, first off, as long as they get into a place where they believe that it's something that's not good, because I think a lot of people will say, well, what's the harm? I'm not hurting anybody.
Well, what is the harm?
Well, there's tons of statistics on the negative effects of the people that are making the porn. Like there's like the suicide rates and depression and the drug use and all that. And you're watching somebody that was made in the image of God, someone's daughter or son or brother or father, whatever. You're watching them. Like, would you want your mom making porn? Of course not. So if you're going to love your neighbor as you love yourself, let's just start with that. But in addition to that, pornography is linked to like depression. And if you Google even NoFap is the seminal retention where you don't ejaculate. And I believe in sex transmutation. Napoleon Hill wrote about it in Think and Grow Rich, where you can harness your sexual energy and you can use it to accomplish things. They said all kinds of people of notable people throughout history have done this.
Apostle Paul.
Right. Yeah, probably.
But you mean in different cultures have cottoned on to this, different faiths.
So sex transmutation he wrote that book, probably 100 years ago, but NoFap is a big thing right now. There's tons of videos about NoFap. And so I would say start there. And so first agree that it's something that you don't want in your life, that it's poison and you don't want it. Okay. It doesn't mean you're going to be perfect, because I struggled with it throughout the last 10 years. I mean, it's not been something I've been perfect at. But what really helped me break some strongholds in my life was like, as the vision became clear for what God was having me do or wanted me to do, I really knew I needed his help. And I felt like he might answer more if I was obedient. So there's been multiple times I signed covenants with God where I was like, I'm not, and I read an article on it that kind of prompted me to do it years ago, but it basically said, you write this out, and I encourage anybody to do it, to say, that you won't look lustfully at a woman for X period of time. Maybe you start with 1 day or 3 days or whatever. And for me, that just meant I won't hold a thought intentionally in my mind, and I won't look at pornography for this period of time. God, I need your help with it. You know I'm not strong in this area. If I do it, God, I'm asking you to bless me greatly, open doors for me that no man can shut. And if I don't do it, I'm asking you to punish me severely and fight against me with the sword of your mouth. That's what the article said. And you sign it and you date it. And it's scary because like you're basically asking God to punish you if you break the covenant. But what it did for me was it provided the gas and the brake, because I really wanted the blessing. I didn't want the punishment. So there have been times where I would go to bed depressed because I would have looked at something and used porn as an escape because I was feeling sorry for myself that I've been single for so long and, you know, whatever. So that helped me a lot. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Is that good? You think that's
absolutely. I think a lot of what I've heard you say in the past as well is community.
Community.
Like having people around you, which is what City Fam is ultimately, like how it's birthed out of, you know, people struggling with whatever it is. Porn, addictions, dysfunctional relationships, you know, a family around you can be 98% of the battle.
Yeah, so good. I was just thinking about this. The depression part, how porn is linked to depression, is supposedly when you look at porn, you get this unnatural flood of dopamine in your brain. And then your brain is always trying to regulate whatever homeostasis or whatever the term is. So the dopamine receptors reduce in your brain after that flood. And then what that means is you need more just regular things to get you to a place of normal happiness. Yeah. So I think tying that into community is like, if you eliminate pornography as an option, then you're going to have to go do something else to get some kind of dopamine, whether, you know, like I think if that is an option, you might say, okay, well, I'm just going to stay in tonight.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
And because that's something to do. But if that's not anything to do, now you got to go out and maybe have a conversation with somebody.
Right.
And for me, like I think the way God wired it. So when I was in the clubs, like you mentioned, Pastor Larry, I had a community of people, but everybody was kind of using each other on some level, right? Because we're sleeping with each other, selling each other drugs or whatever it was. We were lowering the bar for each other. Yeah. So with City Fam, like when you take the sex out, it's like, now I have to add some kind of value to your life. Or what is this based off of anymore? Because we're not out lowering the bar for each other. And then how it's worked for me is I cultivated this good group of people around me by me adding value. And then when God revealed the vision to me, I needed their help, you know, because I was only good at about this much stuff. So I borrowed a car off somebody, and other people volunteered to do things. And that's where I think that's why God doesn't make us good at everything. Yeah. Because he wants you to need other people. Yeah. And if you don't have a community, you good luck getting much done with your life, because you're only good at a few things.
Yeah. It's so true, man. That's so true. So where can they find you? Social media, everything.
Yeah, Rob at City Fam. Oh, well, Rob B. Kowalski is my username pretty much across the board. ROBBKOWALSKI.
Awesome.
And then City Fam, the best thing to do is to join the Facebook group, and it's free to join it, and you can find it at friendswithbetterbenefits.com.
Oh, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, Rob, thanks for coming in today, man. We so enjoyed this. We got to have you back on again. Just go a little deep dive into some other things in the future. And Pastor Jonathan, thanks so much again, man, for keeping us on track. And God bless you guys. I hope that in some way that this enriched your life.